You can wait outside, Fred. The ceremony is already full. The words of Ricardo Mendonça, our commercial director, echoed through the company's main hall as all eyes turned to me. My hands closed around the envelope I was carrying, the same envelope containing the documentation for 62 contracts I had closed on my own in the last 8 months. "Excuse me." I managed to whisper, my voice almost inaudible over the clinking of champagne glasses circulating among my colleagues already seated at tables covered with white linen tablecloths. Ricardo waved dismissively, his thin smile laden with barely concealed contempt. "We're at maximum capacity for the ceremony, you understand?" I looked around the spacious hall. Every colleague in my department was comfortably seated at the tables. Even Tyler, the intern who had been with us for exactly 21 days. The same intern who, somehow, had presented my consultative sales strategy as his own during last month's board meeting. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" Ricardo added with that icy smile. "You're just a salesman." At that moment, it all crystallized. The missed promotions, the stolen ideas, the endless hours working late. My gaze shifted to the projection screen announcing the Sales Excellence Award that should have had my name engraved on it. "I understand," I replied calmly, opening my laptop. "Check your emails." Moments later, as notification sounds echoed through the hall, I walked out, closing the door behind me and leaving behind their voices suddenly filled with panic. Before I continue with what happened next, could you imagine for a moment being in my place? That feeling when years of your work are discarded while someone else gets all the credit. If you've ever been underestimated or ignored, you'll understand why what I did next changed everything forever. My name is Fred Fernando, and until that day, I was the senior salesman at one of the fastest-growing business consulting firms in the country. I have a natural gift for reading people and an almost photographic memory for negotiation details. Skills that made me exceptional at my job, but terrible at corporate politics. I'm the kind of person who speaks directly and works late. Who believes that solving problems matters more than who gets the credit for solving them. I was completely wrong. I grew up in a middle-class family where my father ran a small accounting firm and my mother taught at a public school. They raised me to believe that merit would always rise to the top. Another thing they were wrong about. When I joined the company after completing my MBA, I believed I had found my perfect match, a place where innovation and results were supposedly valued above all else. My first year went exactly as I expected. I created a customer tracking system that increased our retention rate by 42%. I developed predictive models that helped our clients optimize their growth strategies. I even discovered a critical flaw in our core software that could have cost us our largest client. Every time I presented my findings through the appropriate channels, following company protocol to the letter, the problems began during my second year, when Ricardo was hired as our new commercial director. He arrived with a reputation for turning struggling divisions into success stories. What no one mentioned was his method, taking credit for his team's achievements while deflecting responsibility for failures. Stay with me because this revenge was 3 years in the making. And the ending will show you exactly why patience is more than a virtue. It's a weapon. If you're enjoying this twist on a classic tale, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see how a single moment of humiliation became the catalyst for a revolution that would change everything forever. The first time it happened, I thought it was a misunderstanding. I had developed a customer segmentation algorithm that identified purchasing behavior patterns with 91% accuracy. After presenting it to Ricardo in a private meeting, I was surprised to find him demonstrating the system to the executive leadership 2 weeks later, without any mention of my contribution. "Excellent work on the segmentation model," he said afterward, thinking that maybe he had just forgotten to give me credit. Ricardo gave me a blank stare, as if I had said something absurd. The conceptual framework was mine. "You just helped with some numbers," he replied with the coldness of someone stating an unquestionable fact. I was stunned into silence. The entire framework, from conception to execution, had been mine. But as a still new employee eager to prove myself as a team player, I let it go. That was my first mistake. Ricardo Mendonça had arrived with impressive credentials, an MBA from Wharton, 15 years of turning troubled divisions into success stories on the East Coast. What I discovered later was that his method consisted of a simple formula: identify the most productive talents on his team, extract their ideas through collaborative meetings, and then present them as his own insights to senior management. During our first month working together, Ricardo established a routine of weekly one-on-one meetings. "I want to understand how you think, Fred," he would say, leaning over the table with genuine interest. "Your thought processes are fascinating." Naively, I shared my strategies, my methods of market analysis, even drafts of proposals I was developing. 3 weeks later, I watched him give a presentation to the board where he articulated, word for word, the market penetration strategy one had outlined in our last conversation. When I asked him about it later, he sighed like a patient parent dealing with a petulant child. "Fred, you need to understand how the corporate world works. Ideas flow up, responsibility flows down. When I present departmental achievements to leadership, that's the proper chain of command," he explained, organizing papers on his desk without even looking at me. That's when Tyler Morrison entered the picture. At 23, the nephew of Patricia Morrison, our CEO, Tyler possessed that casual confidence that only privilege can provide. His internship was advertised as an opportunity for emerging talent, but we all knew it was pure nepotism. During his first week, Tyler spent more time photographing the office for his social media than learning our systems. By week 2, Ricardo included him in strategic meetings I had been excluded from. By week 3, Tyler was presenting my consultative sales methodology to the board. "Young Tyler has brought a fresh perspective to our customer approach," Ricardo announced during our monthly department meeting. "His relationship-building strategy based on predictive needs analysis is revolutionizing our conversion rate." I watched Tyler smile modestly as colleagues congratulated him on his innovation. The same strategy one had developed over 18 months of analyzing sales data, tested on 62 consecutive contracts, was now being credited to an intern who barely knew how to operate our CRM system. The pattern intensified over the following months. I would identify a problem, develop a solution, share it with Ricardo, and watch as Tyler presented it as his own insight. When I finally found the courage to bring this up with Helena Santos in Human Resources, her response froze me to the bone. "Do you have documentation proving that these were exclusively your ideas?" she asked, without looking up from her computer. "I have the original files with the creation dates," I replied. "But you developed this during work hours using company resources?" "Well, yes, but then it belongs to the company, not to you personally. Ricardo is your supervisor. If he presents departmental achievements to leadership, that's the proper chain of command." I left his office understanding the unwritten rules. Ideas flowed upward. Credit rarely flowed downward. I could have continued in this frustrating but tolerable situation, had it not been for what happened 6 months ago. After noticing inefficiencies in our corporate customer acquisition processes, I spent weekends developing a comprehensive solution, a new consultative sales framework that would revolutionize our entire approach. The potential savings for our customers were enormous: 32% reduction in implementation costs, 47% improvement in solution delivery time. I prepared a detailed presentation, practicing late into the night before the quarterly strategy meeting. But when I arrived, Ricardo intercepted me at the door. "The leadership team has a tight schedule today. We need to streamline," he said. "Hand me your materials. I'll incorporate the main points into my overview." Reluctantly, I handed over my presentation folder. I sat through the 3-hour meeting, waiting for my turn, only to watch Ricardo rush through a 2-minute summary that missed all the crucial innovations. The initiative was shelved for further review. 2 weeks later, Tyler joined our team as an intern. Ivy League educated and conveniently related to the CEO. 3 weeks after that, he presented his new consultative sales framework to the executive team, my framework with superficial changes and a new name. The initiative was immediately approved. Tyler was given a permanent position and became the rising star of our department. When I approached Ricardo about it, his response was brutal in its casualness. Tyler's approach incorporated priorities from senior leadership that your version didn't have. That's business, Fred. Results matter more than who came up with what. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by 3 years of work. Innovations that had generated millions for the company. While my salary remained stagnant and my career stalled, something changed inside me. But what Ricardo and Tyler didn't know was that their every move was being watched, cataloged, documented. And while they built their empires on the work they stole from me, I was building something much more powerful, a complete file of evidence that would one day become the basis for their downfall. The real game was just beginning, and they didn't even know they were losing. If I thought I had hit rock bottom, I was wrong. 3 months after Tyler became the department's golden boy with my stolen framework, Ricardo decided to take the game to a whole new level of cruelty. "Fred, we need to talk about your performance," he announced during our weekly one-on-one meeting, sliding a red folder across the table. Inside was a performance review that seemed to have been written by someone describing a completely different employee. "Lack of initiative," I read aloud. "Resistance to change. Inability to generate innovative ideas." I looked at Ricardo, who maintained that expression of fake concern he had perfected. "Is this about my refusal to take credit for Tyler's work?" "Fred, you're being paranoid. Tyler brought fresh perspectives that you just couldn't develop," he replied, leaning back in his leather chair. "Maybe it's time to consider a career change. Sales may not be your forte." The irony was so absurd that I almost laughed. I, who had closed 62 consecutive deals, was being questioned about my aptitude for sales by someone who systematically stole his team's work. But the real blow came the following week during our quarterly department-wide meeting. Ricardo stood up in front of the room, his smile beaming as he pointed to a presentation on the screen. "I'd like to announce our new organizational structure," he said, clicking to the next slide. "Tyler Morrison will be promoted to Manager of Innovative Sales Strategies. He will lead our new Advanced Corporate Solutions division." The room erupted in applause. I watched Tyler stand up, his false modesty as he waved to his colleagues like a politician on the campaign trail. At 23, with less than 6 months at the company, he was now officially hierarchically above me. "Tyler will be responsible for developing and implementing our next generations of sales methodologies," Ricardo continued, "based on the extraordinary success of his revolutionary framework." Each word was like a stab in the back. Not only had they stolen my work, but now they were building an entire department around it, with the thief as its leader. After the meeting, I ran into a few colleagues in the hallway. Their reaction was revealing. "Man, this is heavy," muttered Jake from finance. Everyone knows that strategy was hers. But his voice was low, as if he were sharing a dangerous secret. "Tyler didn't even know what predictive analytics was when he got here," added Amanda from logistics. "Now suddenly he's a genius." What bothered me most wasn't the injustice itself, but everyone's passive acceptance of it. They recognized the absurdity, but none were willing to speak up. The fear was palpable: fear of Ricardo, fear of confronting nepotism, fear of becoming the next target. That night, I called my wife Patricia, trying to keep my voice steady as I told her about Tyler's promotion. "They can do that?" she asked, the shock evident in her voice. "Promote someone using work that isn't even his?" "Apparently they can, and they did," I replied, sitting in my car in the company parking lot. "And now Tyler will technically be my boss." Patricia was silent for a moment. "Fred, you need to get out of there. This is destroying you." She was right. Over the past few months, I had lost weight, slept poorly, and constantly checked work emails even on weekends. The situation was eroding my self-esteem and affecting our family. But leaving would mean they won. It would mean they could continue doing this to other employees, destroying careers and stealing work with no consequences. It was the next morning that everything changed forever. I arrived at the office early, as usual, and found Tyler at my desk, going through my files. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice louder than I intended. Tyler looked up casually, as if he were just checking the weather. "Just reviewing the division's projects. As your new manager, I need to understand your current processes." "Those are my personal files." "Actually, they're company files," he corrected, his tone condescending. "And now that I oversee this area, I have full access." He picked up a specific folder, the one containing my most recent market analysis, 3 weeks of work I had completed the previous Friday. "Interesting approach," he commented, flipping through the documents. "I'll need to present this to the board next week. Of course, with a few modifications to align with our new departmental strategy." At that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't an explosion of anger or dramatic despair. It was a cold, calculated clarity, like ice forming instantly in super-chilled water. "Sure," I replied calmly. "Anything that helps the department." Tyler smiled, interpreting my calmness as resignation. "Excellent. I knew you'd understand your new position here." But as he spoke, my mind was already working 3 steps ahead. 4 months, I had documented every instance of intellectual theft, every inappropriate conversation, every questionable decision. Not out of revenge, but out of instinct, the same attention to detail that made me exceptional at sales. Now, for the first time, I understood exactly what all those notes were for. As Tyler continued to review my files with growing arrogance, I began mentally cataloging the resources I would need, specific contacts in the industry, documentation I could legally obtain, and the precise timing for each move. They had spent so much time building their empires on stolen work that they forgot a fundamental principle: structures built on false foundations are always unstable. And I had spent years learning exactly where every crack, every weak spot was located. Ricardo thought he had broken me. Tyler believed he had humiliated me completely. Both were about to discover the difference between looking defeated and being defeated. That afternoon, for the first time in months, I left the office on time. Not because I was giving up, but because I had real work to do. Work they would never see coming. The war had officially begun, but this time, I would choose the battlefield. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't turn on my laptop to check work emails. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine that Patricia and I had been saving for special occasions and spread 3 years of documentation across the dining room table. Each folder contained a specific category: secretly recorded conversations with Ricardo where he admitted to stealing ideas from the team, time-stamped emails showing when I had sent proposals that later appeared in Tyler's presentations, and detailed records of every client I had personally won. But the most valuable file was in a red folder labeled Personal Backup. For years, out of sheer meticulous salesmanship, I had kept copies of all my original contracts, recordings of successful sales calls, and even photos of the documents Tyler was reviewing on my desk. Patricia found me at 2 a.m, still organizing evidence. "Fred, what's all this?" she asked, looking at the documents scattered like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle. 3 years of proof that I'm not crazy," I replied, showing her a recording on my phone. It was Ricardo at our December department meeting, saying, "Fred had some interesting ideas, but Tyler really turned the concepts into viable strategies." Her voice trembled when she heard it. "My God, Fred. That's documented. You can sue them." "Suing would be too slow and uncertain," I explained calmly. "Corporate lawyers, endless appeals, years of legal battles. Besides, they have resources I don't have." I picked up another folder. "But I have something they don't." Over the next few days, I implemented the first phase of my plan. I began discreetly contacting former colleagues who had left the company under similar circumstances. The first call was to Marcus Chun, who had been fired 2 years earlier after Ricardo presented his customer retention strategy as his own. "Fred, man, I thought you'd never call," Marcus said when I explained why I was calling. "That company is toxic. Ricardo does this to every talented person who comes near him." "Do you have documentation of what happened?" I asked. "I have everything. Emails, recordings, even witnesses. But my lawyer said it would be an uphill battle against their legal department." Over the next few weeks, I discovered I wasn't alone. Amanda Rodriguez from finance had left after her cost optimization analysis was credited to her manager. David Park had missed out on a promotion when his market analysis methodology appeared in a presentation Ricardo gave to investors. Each conversation revealed the same pattern: talented employees being systematically exploited, their ideas stolen, their careers sabotaged. More importantly, each of them had kept detailed documentation, instinctively protecting themselves from future accusations. During this period, Ricardo and Tyler intensified their campaign against me. At the weekly Monday meeting, Ricardo announced a reorganization of responsibilities that effectively removed all of my key clients and transferred them to Tyler. "Fred will be responsible for lead development and administrative support," he said with that fake smile. "This will allow Tyler to focus on the strategic accounts that require his unique expertise." The humiliation was deliberate and public. Watching my colleagues avoid eye contact as I was reduced to a glorified assistant was the moment when any residual hesitation disappeared completely. But they didn't know that their every move was being meticulously documented. During our one-on-one meeting on Wednesday, Ricardo was particularly cruel. "Fred, I'm going to be blunt because I like you," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You clearly don't have what it takes for strategic sales. Tyler has demonstrated in 6 months what you haven't been able to do in 3 years." I kept my expression neutral as the recorder in my pocket captured every word. Perhaps it's time to consider a transition to another area. Human resources, maybe. Or administrative. Places where your attention to detail would be more appropriate. If you're following this journey of transformation, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed not only my life, but the lives of everyone who had been wronged at that company. While Ricardo was talking about my lack of strategic vision, I was mentally reviewing the call I had made the previous morning to Catherine Morrison, the CEO. "I'd like to schedule a private meeting with you," I had said. "I have information about departmental irregularities that I believe would be of interest to you." Her assistant scheduled it for the following Friday. Catherine didn't know I was Tyler's uncle. That would be revealed during our conversation, along with evidence of how nepotism was affecting the company's productivity and morale. But my strategy went far beyond simply exposing Ricardo and Tyler internally. During the evenings, after Patricia fell asleep, I worked on something much more ambitious. Using my industry contacts, I began discreetly probing for opportunities. Not traditional jobs, but something completely different. During a particularly revealing call with Sarah Kim, a former client who had become an independent consultant, she mentioned something interesting. "You know, Fred, several of us former clients have been discussing starting our own consulting firm. We're tired of paying exorbitant prices for mediocre services," she said. "If we had someone with your expertise and work ethic." It was at that moment that I realized my revenge would not just be exposing the corrupt system, it would be replacing it with something better. I spent the next 2 weeks developing a comprehensive business plan. Not just for my own consulting firm, but for a cooperative of talented professionals who had been discarded by companies that valued politics over performance. Marcus, Amanda, David, and 3 other former employees expressed interest in joining the project. Each brought unique expertise and, more importantly, a portfolio of clients frustrated with their current providers. On the Thursday before my meeting with Catherine, Tyler made his most arrogant move yet. During our departmental meeting, he announced that he had developed a new market expansion strategy. I watched silently as he presented, word for word, the plan I had submitted confidentially to Ricardo 6 months earlier. The same plan that had been filed for further review. This innovative approach could increase our market penetration by 40%, Tyler declared with the confidence of someone who truly believed his own words. When he finished, Ricardo stood up to applaud. "Excellent work, Tyler. That's exactly the kind of visionary thinking our company needs." At that moment, watching the standing ovation my own work was receiving at the hands of someone else, I felt a crystal-clear calm settle over me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't frustration. It was the absolute certainty that I had made the right decision. The next morning, as I was getting ready for the meeting that would change everything, I received a text message from Amanda. "Fred, I just confirmed it. 5 former major clients are ready to sign contracts with us as soon as we officially launch." I put my phone in my pocket and grabbed my briefcase containing 3 years of evidence. It was time to show Catherine Morrison exactly what kind of company she was running. And after that, it would be time to show Ricardo and Tyler what happens when you underestimate someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. On Friday morning, I arrived at CEO Catherine Morrison's office at 9 o'clock sharp. Her assistant led me through the executive corridor, a space I had only glimpsed during my 3 years with the company. Catherine was sitting behind an impressive mahogany desk, reviewing documents. At 52, she projected a quiet authority that explained how she had built a $100 million company from the ground up. "Mr. Fernando, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Your message mentioned departmental irregularities. I'm interested in hearing your concerns." I opened my briefcase and placed the first piece of evidence on the table, a timestamp recording of Ricardo admitting to stealing his team's work. "Ms. Morrison, for the past 3 years, I have systematically documented a pattern of intellectual appropriation, nepotism, and mismanagement in our sales department," I began calmly. "What you are about to hear may be disturbing." I played the recording where Ricardo said, verbatim, "Fred had some interesting ideas, but Tyler really turned the concepts into viable strategies." Catherine frowned, leaning forward. "When was this recording made?" 2 weeks ago, during our department meeting. Tyler had just presented my market expansion strategy as his own. I showed her the original files with timestamps, proving that I had developed the strategy 6 months before Tyler was hired. Over the next 40 minutes, I presented evidence after evidence. Recordings, emails, original documents, testimonials from former employees. Catherine remained silent, her expression hardening with each new revelation. "And Tyler Morrison is your nephew," I concluded, handing her the last folder. For the first time, Catherine looked genuinely shocked. "How did you find that out?" "Basic public records research. What concerns me isn't the nepotism itself, but how it's being used to validate systematic appropriation of intellectual work." Catherine leaned back in her chair, processing everything. "Mr. Fernando, these are very serious allegations. If proven, they will result in immediate terminations." "I understand, Ms. Morrison. But I need to be transparent about something." I took a deep breath. "I'm not here seeking promotion or compensation. I'm here as a professional courtesy, informing you of a situation that will significantly affect your company." Her expression changed. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday I submitted my resignation, effective today. Along with me, 7 other talented employees who have suffered under the same system. In addition, 5 of your top clients will be transferring their contracts to our new company next week." The silence in the room was absolute. Catherine stared at me with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "You orchestrated a mass exodus," she said slowly. "I created an opportunity for talented people to thrive in an environment that values merit over politics. Clients will naturally follow where they receive better service." At that moment, Catherine's phone rang. She answered, her voice tense. "What? When?" After a few minutes, she hung up and looked directly at me. "Apparently, my sales department is in a state of panic. Ricardo just found out that half his team resigned simultaneously, and Tyler is trying to control an exodus of clients." I smiled for the first time during our meeting. I imagined so. 15 minutes later, as Catherine analyzed the legal implications of the evidence, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. The door burst open, revealing Ricardo with a red face and Tyler right behind him. "Catherine, we need to talk about Fred immediately," Ricardo began, but stopped when he saw me sitting calmly at the table. "Hello, Ricardo." "Tyler," I greeted them with genuine warmth. "What the hell have you done?" Tyler exploded, his jovial demeanor completely abandoned. 5 clients canceled contracts this morning." "Actually, it was 6, I corrected him. "Morrison and Associates called while you were coming up." Ricardo approached the table, his hands shaking visibly. "You can't just steal our clients. This is legal," I finished. "I've carefully checked all the contracts. None contain non-competition clauses applicable to the type of services we'll be offering." Catherine stood up, her presence dominating the room. "Ricardo, Tyler, get out. Now." "But Catherine," Ricardo protested, "this man is trying to destroy the company." "Get out," Catherine repeated, her voice cutting like ice. "We'll be talking very soon about separate issues." After the door closed, Catherine returned to her chair. "Mr. Fernando, you've turned your departure into a powerful statement. I've merely demonstrated that true talent always finds its way, Ms. Morrison. With or without institutional recognition." She picked up one of the recordings, shaking her head. "In 20 years of building this company, I never imagined something like this was happening right under my nose." "Toxic systems thrive on silence," I replied. "Once exposed to light, they rarely survive." Catherine held out her hand. "Good luck with your new company, Mr. Fernando. I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot about you in the future." I shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Morrison. And for the opportunity to set the record straight." As I walked down the executive corridor for the last time, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. In the elevator, I checked my phone, 8 messages from new clients interested in working with us, 3 from candidates wanting to join our team, and a photo of Marcus in our new office building, smiling as he installed our sign. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, revealing the lobby I knew so well. But now, instead of a workplace, it just seemed like a building. A closed chapter in a much larger story that was just beginning. As I crossed the parking lot toward my car, I heard my name being shouted behind me. It was Tyler, running to catch up with me. "Fred, wait." He stopped in front of me, breathing heavily. "We can work this out." Whatever her offer is, we can match it. I looked at him with genuine curiosity. Tyler, what do you think her offer is? Money, obviously. A promotion. Profit sharing. Whatever you want. I smiled softly. You really don't get it, do you? I got into my car, rolled down the window, and looked at him one last time. Tyler, this was never about money. It was about integrity. And that's not for sale. As I drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror as Tyler stood in the parking lot, finally realizing that he had completely misjudged the situation. What neither of them knew yet was that our little cooperative had attracted the attention of serious investors. And that next Monday, we would announce an expansion that would transform the entire industry. The war was over before they even realized it had begun. 6 months after my dramatic departure, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Catherine Morrison, the CEO of my former company. Fred, I need to talk to you in person, she said, her voice carrying an urgency she rarely displayed. Can we meet today? We arranged to meet at a cafe near the business district. When I arrived, Catherine was already there, looking visibly tired and older than the last time we had met. Thank you for coming, she began, fidgeting nervously with her cup. I need to tell you what happened after you left. Over the next hour, Catherine recounted a sequence of events that surpassed even my most optimistic expectations. Ricardo had been fired 3 days after our meeting, when an internal audit revealed not only systematic intellectual appropriation, but also financial irregularities that he had hidden for years. The recordings you provided led to a full investigation, Catherine explained. We discovered that Ricardo was inflating sales figures, creating phantom customers, and skimming commissions. Tyler was helping, thinking it was just advanced sales strategy. But the real twist came when Catherine told me about the legal consequences. Ricardo is facing criminal charges of corporate fraud. Tyler lost his position and was demoted to a basic administrative role. He resigned 2 weeks later, claiming the work environment had become hostile. Catherine sighed deeply. We lost 42% of our revenue in 4 months. 15 of our best employees resigned after finding out how the real innovators were treated. We had to completely restructure the sales department. Fred, I didn't come here to blame you. I came to thank you, she said, completely surprising me. You forced us to confront a rot that was destroying our corporate culture from within. If we had continued down the same path, the entire company could have collapsed within a few years. 3 weeks after that meeting, my new company, Fernando Solutions Cooperative, announced our first international expansion. We started as a small consulting firm with 8 people operating out of a rented office. Now we were a company with 123 employees and offices in 5 cities. What made our story unique was not just the growth, but our operating philosophy. We created a model where every employee had a share in the profits based on documented individual contributions. No one could steal credit because every idea was transparently tracked from conception to implementation. Marcus Chun, my first partner and former victim of Ricardo, became our director of innovation. During our quarterly meeting, he shared statistics that filled me with pride. Fred, our employee retention rate is 97%. Our customer satisfaction is 94%. And most importantly, 0 cases of intellectual appropriation because our system simply doesn't allow it. The real validation came when Harvard Business School published a case study about our company, titled Democratizing Innovation: How a Cooperative Transformed Corporate Sales. A year after leaving that conference room humiliated, I was invited to give the keynote address at the National Sales Conference. The event was held at the same hotel where Ricardo used to brag about his revolutionary strategies in years past. When I walked onto the stage and saw Tyler and Ricardo in the audience, I felt a deep sense of calm. There was no anger, no resentment, no need to humiliate them publicly. There was only the opportunity to share what I had learned. Good afternoon, I began. My name is Fred Fernando, and a year ago, I was a frustrated salesman who let others steal my work. Over the next 45 minutes, I told my story without mentioning specific names, focusing on lessons about leadership, innovation, and creating healthy corporate cultures. The most powerful moment of my career wasn't when I got revenge against those who hurt me, I said, looking directly at Tyler and Ricardo. It was when I realized that my true mission was not to destroy a toxic system, but to build a better one. After the talk, Tyler approached the stage. He looked younger than he had at our last meetings, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Fred, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, his voice without the arrogance I had known. "I want to apologize," he said, avoiding eye contact. "At the time, I truly believed I was just learning from your experience. Ricardo convinced me that was how the corporate world worked." "Tyler, everyone deserves a second chance to build something meaningful," I replied. "If you need guidance or references, you can come to me." The relief on his face was evident. "Thanks, Fred. That means a lot." As Tyler walked away, Ricardo appeared. Unlike Tyler, who seemed genuinely remorseful, Ricardo maintained that defensive posture I knew so well. "Nice presentation," he said, forcing a smile. Although some parts seemed familiar. "Ricardo, after everything that happened, do you still believe it was just business?" I asked with genuine curiosity. 2 years after that conference, Fernando Solutions Cooperative was acquired by an international consortium for $120 million. But instead of selling completely, I negotiated a deal where we retained operational autonomy and our employees received a proportional share of the acquisition profit. Marcus received $2.5 million. Amanda, $1,800,000. Every employee, including our receptionist who had only been with us for 8 months, received at least $60,000. During our celebration party, Patricia, my wife, pulled me aside to a quieter corner. "I'm proud of you," she said, her eyes shining. "Not for the money or the success, but for the person you've become in the process." The Fred I met 15 years ago would have used that money to buy expensive cars and show Ricardo and Tyler how successful he is, she explained, smiling. This Fred has created a scholarship fund for underprivileged students and is planning a second company focused on mentoring young professionals. She was right. At some point during our journey, I had stopped measuring success by the defeat of others and started measuring it by my ability to lift up those around me. Today, 10 years after being excluded from that award ceremony, I lead a business empire of 450 employees spread across 12 countries. But the number I'm most proud of isn't our annual revenue of $82 million. It's the number 0 cases of intellectual property theft, 0 retaliatory firings, 0 employees who left claiming unfair treatment. The last I heard, Ricardo was working as a business ethics consultant, helping other organizations identify and correct toxic cultures. Tyler opened a business school focused on business ethics for young entrepreneurs. The real revenge wasn't destroying those who hurt me. It was proving that there is a better way to do business, a way that benefits everyone involved without requiring someone to be diminished so that others can rise. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt underestimated or had your work stolen, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories of people who turned injustice into opportunities to create something extraordinary. Sometimes, when someone tries to destroy you, they are actually setting you free to build something much greater than you ever imagined possible.